Okay then. So our first presenter of the evening, a couple things to say about him. This gentleman is related to Bazooka Joe. True story. He learned much of what he knows about photography from someone who was blind. He's a well-known photographer around. He's been earning his life living and consulting in nonprofits all over. He's had his camera stolen twice. He was featured in a story at Family Circle magazine, so he actually used up his 15 minutes. They're done. In writing about his dance photography, Bob Keyes once wrote, "He doesn't look like a dancer." All shapes and sizes, folks. And this gentleman probably holds the record for the most times presenting at Pachakcha. I'd like to bring up Arthur Fink.
And I'm going to grab 5 seconds before I press the bell to tell you that I do it because it's fun. And you can do it, and you ought to sign up to give one of these talks, and you'll have a ball, and your friends will love you. That's my dad. And was a graphic designer, designed packages and typography. So it's not at all surprising to see him photographing the type on that window. Lunch for $1.19. This was a set of images that my mother gave me of his taken in the 40s and 50s. Now, of course, he did what dads are supposed to do. He took lots of pictures of his kids. I took a master class with the photographer Arnold Newman. He told us the first rule of photography is that you can't take a bad picture of your children. Now, let's get on with learning photography, he said. But he didn't just take pictures of his kids. He also took some unusual pictures of his kids, which showed me that looking wasn't a momentary experience, that he was always looking, and when the right moment came, and the right moment is going to come, there he was, ready with his camera. I hope I haven't offended your sensibilities. I learned, he never taught me much about photography or about seeing, but I feel that I learned a lot from him. And that's really what I want to talk about tonight. I informed myself by looking real carefully at these images that he had took that I had not seen. He could take pictures of people without their looking at him. Sometimes they didn't even look at each other. I think this is also wartime France. If you know my photography, you will see some of the linkage. You can tell that he's a graphic designer, a type designer, and there's a very rigid grid that enters even into this kind of image. And very unconsciously, I do very much the same thing. And in fact, when I look at images with my photography students, very often I will hold up a piece of paper and just trace all the lines that go through it. I don't know how this picture entered his repertoire, except to say that hidden under this very practical man was a deep conscience and a real interest in the social condition of people, although he told me to not get involved and not take risks. We spent a lot of time at the Metropolitan Museum. We always made a beeline to the Degas sculptures of dancers, and I have to believe, although it didn't occur to me until recently, that this image that I saw so often must have had a lot to do with my own work with dancers, which is compelling. But type is what really drew him. This also draws me because I'm a fish. Or no, I'm not a fish, I'm a Pisces. If you really love me, give me herring 3 times a day and espresso in the morning. He taught, I don't know if you can read at the top, it says, Mississippi's finest all-color nightclub. This was during World War II in Mississippi, or beginning of World War II when he was in basic training. Always an interest in typography and very, very strong graphic compositions. And he said type is made to be read. This lettering identified beams that were going to be erected as buildings in New York City, where we grew up. And always ready to to photograph them and see patterns and add some linearity, and to focus on the detail. And I could almost with a rubber stamp say, and as he did this, he showed me a way of looking, a way of working with type and space and simplicity and form and function. And even in my consulting, I'll say, what are we trying to do? But the words weren't just words. And Kennedy, King, Christ, how many more must die? Somehow he found that with all the scribbles that you can find in Manhattan. And even when he was photographing a tree, that very conscious linear form is kind of a template that gives it order. And I'm putting these words on his images, talking about my own. That's what's going on for me. I want to do a talk called My Father's Monhegan and Mine. This is a picture he took in Monhegan. And not having seen this, I've taken that same picture a half dozen times since, and the space hasn't changed. And I want to really trace that whole set of images that he took, and for every one I have one of my own. This picture, for him it might have been about Tums. For me it's also about the 3rd Avenue L, one of the iconic parts of New York that I grew up in. And one of the things that I learned from my dad is that photography can be an expressive medium. It can tell the story of how the 3rd Avenue L, as a subway, a piece of technology, intruded in the city, broke it up almost the way many of us feel that Franklin Arterial broke up Portland. Even though he didn't really live to see it being put together, it was an intrusion. But at the same time, he could photograph this elegant 3rd Avenue L, which had the grace and charm and love that made the city. And that makes it an exciting, beautiful piece of architecture that reflects all the crafts and trades. He taught me to be simple and straightforward and tell the story with transparency, but when he could use reflections or other things, he was not afraid to. And with timid feet, I'm beginning to do something of the same thing. And mostly, he was not afraid to see other people's trash with his camera, not with his hands, put a frame around it, and call it his art, and know that even if there wasn't an audience assembled, it was a really important expression for him. Thank you, Carl Kelman Fink.
Arthur Fink. And as I heard the distinctive pa-chunk during Arthur's presentation, if you got a cellular device, smartphone, stupid phone, and other technology in your pocket, please put it on silent or turn it off.